Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another week. This is the Live Life Aggressively Show. Sincere Hogan got my man Mike Mull on the other side. Hey, man, really excited about our guest today, man. It's been a minute since we talked to him, but every time he comes on, he brings a lot of great info, and I don't think today is going to be any different, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he's best known for exposing Tim Ferriss as the ultimate 4-hour a-hole. But in addition to that, he actually has a lot of great information on training, nutrition, supplementation, one of our most popular listener favorites. So we're going to go ahead and introduce Thomas Incledon. Welcome back, Thomas.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much.
Great to have you. Good. You got a lot of interesting stuff.
Happy New Year, man.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Thanks, you too, guys. It's weird, man. It just feels like time is going by faster the older I get.
Yeah.
Which can be a scary thing. So.
I remember 4 years in high school. I remember 4 years was an eternity. And it was also eternity in college. But then after that, I think when I hit 30, 4 years just went by like that, like 26 to 40. And now if you don't really take charge of your time and make things happen ASAP, years just get away from you. Your whole life will get away from you. You'll see that. I think it would be really interesting to talk to older people who just didn't pull the trigger on anything and their life just got away from them.
Like, talk to them about this stuff, not on their deathbed. Like, okay, let's talk about those regrets while you still have a chance to fix it. While you have a chance to fix some of them, Let's do an intervention, a regret intervention. I want to wait. I don't want to sit there and interview them like on their deathbed, like, so, okay, you got about an hour left, man. You want to talk about some things that you can get taken care of,
Yeah, my regret is letting you in here. Letting you in here to talk to me is my big regret.
That makes me think when I was younger, I would see my guy friends that were dating the hottest women, and I would always be like, hey, how did you meet that girl? So thinking I'll learn from them, how to meet really attractive women.
Yeah.
Never seen it work for me, though. And then as I got older and I started seeing all my friends get divorced, then I would be like, with the guys that were married, like, and were still together, I'd be like, what did you guys figure out to stay together? So the point I just want to make is how our perspectives change as we get older and mature, and where I've been, I guess, more recently is I would meet guys that I would say, man, this guy's got a good work life. So whether he runs his own business or works for someone else, either way, he's happy there. He's not stressing out and, ready to have a heart attack any moment. He's got a beautiful family where everybody's, doing something productive and happy. And he's still, with his wife, walking and holding hands, that kind of stuff. And as I see that, what I realize, that is, it's extremely hard to balance all of those areas out. And it's a lot of different people in your circle of influence to kind of please, between work people and personal people and everything else you have going on, and stay healthy.
I think the important part you made is everyone is doing something, right? You talked about the family where everyone's doing something productive. I think that's a really important point. I think a lot of couples deteriorate where one person is doing a lot, they're driven, they're making stuff happen, and maybe the other person is marginalized to a supplemental role or what would you say in
best supporting? The best supporting, whatever.
Best supporting cast, exactly.
Exactly.
I think if everyone is doing something that's interesting, everyone's excited about their life, right? So when you come together, it's this mutual excitement as opposed to one person's going on and on and on about all the great things they're doing, and the other person is, well, wow, all I did was watch TV today, or or everything. Even with friends,
I'm waiting for you.
Friends with people. Yeah, you can't be friends with people where you meet up with them and you have all this stuff going on, and they don't have anything going on. It's just too one-sided. Eventually, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, that's the challenge, when you got friends from, let's say, high school, and now you're reconnecting X years later, and they're still talking about high school, and you're talking about your next discovery you're planning. It's like, dude, let that home run go, man. Move on.
My college friends I meet up with, I had some college friends I hadn't seen for a long time that I met up with in Los Angeles when I lived out there. And the first meeting was cool, right? You're just catching up on whatever you've been doing since the last time you saw them. And then you're talking about some fun stories from back in the day. So that was fun. The second meeting, though, got uncomfortable because there was nowhere to go. It's like you already talked about everything that you did in the past. You're already caught up on what you've been doing since then. And now there's nowhere to go. And then that was usually the end of it. You're like, all right, talk to you in 10 years.
All of a sudden, you
I've had that.
The great storyteller. They're all listening to you now. You don't talk about your life, and you're like, wait a minute. Well, I feel like I'm at a campfire. I'm the great griot all of a sudden. It's like, okay, dude, it's your turn to talk. It's like, nah, man, I'm just listening to you. That's like the worst line to ever hear in a conversation. God. Nah, man, I'm just listening to you. Like, I've been talking for an hour, dude. Seriously, you don't have anything to contribute. I'm tired of hearing myself talk.
That happened to me at one of Tim Larkin's parties, actually, years ago. He had some housewarming party. He and Sasha moved into a new place. And I don't know how it happened, but all of a sudden, I was talking to one person, and then someone else showed up, and then another person showed up. And then all of a sudden, I realized I'm giving a lecture. I'm talking about hormone stuff, and there's 6 people. And I find, like you said, sister, I stopped talking after a while. And then no one had anything to say. It was just quiet. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll keep talking.
Well, that donation bucket, all of a sudden, like, all right, here we go. Since I'm giving a lecture,
exactly.
Go ahead and chip in.
Well, if you wanted to get rid of them quickly, that's what you would say. So, you know what? People pay me a lot for this kind of information, so I'm going to have to go ahead and start charging you guys. You whip out your phone. You're like, I can take your credit card here.
Definitely, man.
So Thomas, man, you have a lot of great stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, so, thinking about balance, it kind of reminds me of a short story, then I'll kind of lead into some of the stuff about sleep.
Okay.
And so when I was a graduate research student, I was at the Department of Biophysics and Physiology at the University of Miami Medical School, and this is going back into like the 90s. And I was involved in a project where I was measuring fluorescent light emissions off these proteins. And so basically, I'm in like this closet that we call a research lab. There's no outside windows, and there's no visible light. Like I got to turn off all the lights. I got to basically work in the dark, basically. And this is going on where I would get into the office before the sun came up, and I would leave way past the sun, was set. And about a year and a half into this, my joints are killing me. I'm tired all the time. And, my strength is like leaving me. It's like flowing away from my body like a negative key energy force leaving me, And I'm like, so I go and I see this doctor at the hospital or that's associated with the medical school. And like, hey, doc, do you think there could be anything going on with the fact that I don't sleep anymore since I'm working around the clock to get this research done in a timely fashion? It's like, oh, no, there's no research on that. It's like, oh, well, what about the fact I don't get any sunlight either? I haven't seen the sun in so long, I'm afraid I'm going to burn up. It's like, no research on that. So I'm like, well, I got to change what I'm doing because what I'm doing just isn't working. I'm basically killing myself. And I can't see a future going this way. So I go to my professors, these are the laboratory directors. Hey, look, I'm dying here, and I can't keep functioning this way, so I'm going to have to change the parameters of how I'm doing my research so that this is now, more like a 9-to-5 job, and I'm not here like walk in and never leave like a Roach Motel or something. I actually need to have a life outside of here. I need to see the sun. So after I shared this with them, their response, of course, was that I lack commitment because I actually cared about my own health. I lack commitment in my research. So I basically then said, all right, I could appreciate that perspective, but since no one here is worried about my health, I got to be the guy that's in charge of, taking control and making sure this health is addressed. So now I start, getting normal sleep, and I start seeing the sun and this thing, and all of a sudden, I start getting superhuman strong. I start kicking ass, and now, of course, everybody around me goes, dude, what drugs are you taking? How do I get them? And I'm like, actually, I'm not taking any drugs. At that time, I didn't have much money. If I had whey protein, I was lucky. And I was like, I'm just getting rest. I don't feel overtrained and banged up. My joints aren't killing me all the time. And so a lot of guys, of course, like, there's no way all you do is get sleep and sunlight and you're fine. I'm like, well, if you didn't have it for 2 years, maybe it could. Well, now we fast forward, and now I own a medical center. I have 40 medical offices. I have doctors working for me, and we can measure any molecule in the human body. This didn't happen overnight. It took a long time to get here. But now we actually measure and test people in their home while they're sleeping, and we see all kinds of issues connected to when there's a problem with sleep. And so if someone has either sleep apnea, which is basically, think of it as like they have trouble breathing or there's an airflow issue, or if they have insomnia, which is kind of like you can't turn your mind off, so you're thinking about stuff. Either way, that affects their sleep cycle, and the consequence of that is they're going to see some glucose dysfunction issues. One of the fastest ways that I've seen patients raise their hemoglobin A1C levels is by cut corners under sleep. And then the thing about that is people are usually tested by doctors to see if they have a risk for diabetes. And so the hemoglobin A1C level is high or goes up, and the doctor's thinking, all right, you need a medication to bring this under control. And there's nothing wrong with that approach. The problem is if the doctor doesn't know, hey, this guy's not sleeping or has a sleep issue, it's kind of the wrong tool to really help this person. Yeah, it could work, but the best tool in that situation would be improve this guy's sleep. And unfortunately, the way insurance works sometimes, they typically require that someone goes and sleeps at an outside sleep center where they're going to hook up all kinds of wires and stuff. But you're in a strange bed. So now you're in a strange environment, strange bed. I actually went through that experience twice. Yeah. You wired it. Well, like, who normally sleeps? Well, actually, I have slept with wires all over me many times, but that's a different reation.
We don't need to hear about that.
We don't need those shocking reveals.
That's right. Shocking story reveals.
You've slept in the same bed as Tim Larkin before, but we don't need to hear about that.
Let's just say Tim's a friendly guy.
No, let's not say that. Okay.
Anyway, you're wired up in a strange environment.
Sincere takes a lot of courses with Tim. You don't want to scare him off.
You're messing me up now, so I can't look at him the same way.
Yeah, you're gonna be standing in a workshop and you're gonna be looking down instead of looking up and paying attention.
Nope.
Like that's where those wire marks came from. Okay, no, that makes sense.
So what happens is you're in a strange environment and you got this stuff around you, and so the process actually interferes with the sleep cycle, and then you get data back that isn't really accurate. So generally speaking, I would prefer someone to get tested at home in the bed they sleep in most of the time. Now, if it's someone that travels a lot in different hotels, then I would maybe test them at home and then maybe test them on the road, because sometimes you won't get accurate data, if someone's not using something consistently. Yeah. And then from there, we would figure out, like acutely, I would have someone maybe use a CPAP to just make sure there's airflow. And then over time, I would, depending on how I would interact with them, I would try to teach them exercises that helps their brain better control their, let's say, facial anatomy, so that now they don't have the relaxation of the soft palate or some other tissues that obstructs the airflow. What'll happen a lot of times, I'll have guys come in and they'll say, I just bought this dental device, or I'm going to get surgery and stuff like that. And my experience on, seeing what happens afterwards is most of the time that does not do a good job. It creates more problems in someone's future than what it solved. So I share that because when a lot of times people have a sleep issue, they go into a surgeon. So, of course, that surgeon may only offer surgical options. And my advice would always be hold off on the surgery and look at other things. Like, for example, lots of people have organisms growing in their mouth or in their nose, and those organisms create inflammatory reactions that make it more difficult to breathe. It's kind of like, congesting them. Those are tests that could be done for like $200, and now you could find out what's going on and then properly treat it, as opposed to doing surgery, which would take a lot more time and usually a lot more money to deal with.
What about the inability, you can fall asleep, but the inability to stay in a deep sleep state where you're frequently getting up and then you have a hard time going back? Yeah,
so part of that, would come from, so here what happens is I would have someone that has those, let's say that's experiencing that, they would sit down with Dr. Anderson, and then she kind of goes through like a very detailed series of questions. So we kind of get a sense of what's going on, like what's the trigger. So sometimes what happens is if someone is choking in their sleep, that choking sensation kind of initiates like a life and death type of stress response. So someone is starting to fall asleep, they choke out, they wake up, and surprisingly, a lot of people are not aware of that. So now that jolt, it skyrocketed cortisol and epinephrine, and so they're not going to go to sleep after that. They're ready to run a race. They're not ready to relax. That's a common thing we see, and many times I'll ask a guy, "Hey, do you snore?" He'll say, "No, not at all, never," something like that. And I look at his wife and I ask her, "Does your husband snore?" And the wife says, "Every night I can't go to sleep because he snores so loud." And so, some guys do know they snore, but a lot of people don't. And what's shocking to me is how many women also snore as well.
Yeah, that's a scary thing to hear too. But when you hear a woman snore like a grizzly bear, that's quite disconcerting.
Well, one of the things that kind of leads us into just a little bit is that I spent some time analyzing all the sales done by every drug company that sells a weight loss drug, every supplement company, as far as like gross revenue for weight loss supplements in the supplement industry, every diet, every gym, and anything, let's say, that could be very broadly interpreted as weight loss. So now we pool all that money, all that revenue from all these companies. You just add it all up. So this is around the United States and also worldwide. So you have these, billions and billions of dollars that have been generated, or let's say sales made or revenues, generated. And now we look at, despite all these companies with all these different strategies, now you compare that with the rate of obesity or overweight in any country in the world, but typically I focus on the United States, and then I look at other data from other countries, and you find there's zero impact. So if you took every weight loss drug from every weight, let's say, drug company that sells drugs for weight loss, every supplement, every diet, every gym that's selling gym memberships, every workout, all the CrossFit stuff combined with all the other, 24-hour fitness and all these other gyms, add up all that data. So this is a lot of people spending a lot of money, and what you see is that's had zero impact. So as diets have come and gone, as gyms have come and gone out of business and restarted, or new gyms have come online, new weight loss machines, all this stuff, it has had zero impact on weight gain in the United States and in pretty much every country in the world. And the reason for that is it's not a single problem. It's not a single problem that's going to require a single tool. It's a very complicated problem that requires a lot of tools at once. And the way most people approach the problem, they kind of fall in love with a treatment, or they fall in love with a technology without ever knowing if that technology would benefit them. And so an example would be if I put oil in my car, and then my car runs better, and I tell you guys, hey, I just put oil in my car. You don't instantly run out to your automobile and throw oil in the engine. You would say, wait, this car doesn't need any oil,
Right.
So that makes it's very logical with a car, but when it comes to our own bodies, what do most people do is they use an outside variable to make a decision that affects their inside. So they got an external cue, my buddy says this worked for him, so I'm going to do it for me. But they have different genetics and different microbiome. And so as a result of that, because you have this increased body mass, you're going to have more and more people that are going to have, anatomical dimensions that change that are going to make it difficult to sleep. And I looked at stuff on the web. I hear people say, hey, I heard this stuff about light and heard this stuff about, different things you can do. And I think some of it can be beneficial, but generally speaking, if someone has issues with airflow, they're not sleeping, period, as well as they could. And so whether or not there's blue light or cell phone lights and other stuff in the room, that is it's got a minor impact. So the first
the airflow is interesting because a lot of people feel that they have a lot of anxiety, right? And that's why they have a hard time sleeping. But it also could be they could have anxiety because of poor airflow, and they're not even thinking of that as the underlying cause.
You feel like you're choking or something like that, so you're constantly in that fight or flight mode. And you're like, I can't breathe,
Yeah, so generally speaking, like if you just looked at someone and without regard, it used to be thought years ago, okay, if your body fat is higher, you're more likely to have, sleep apnea. Well, now you got all these pro bodybuilders and NFL guys. They got sleep apnea and they got abs. They're shredded. They're lean. There's not, so body fat is not an issue. And there's lots of anecdotal reports of, Mr. Olympia competitors that have to sleep sitting upright because they have so much mass. So then they started changing the approach, and what they really started finding is that for people when their neck circumference starts getting 16.5, 17 inches or wider or larger, that's when there starts to be an increase in where basically there's so much mass. However you lay, there's going to be some compression of the airway.
Yeah.
When you get a guy that's huge, who's got a 20-inch neck, chances are pretty high there's going to be a lot of mass there. It's going to really, mess up airflow. So then the question is, how do you correct this in a way that creates less stress, less problems and stress for this person? And one thing I will say with anxiety and certain other things that people feel, let's say, psychologically, a lot of this stuff is, whether you think it's in your mind, whether you think it's in your body, or whether you think it's, a feeling or an emotion, it's all connected. It's the same organism, right? That's basically holding all this stuff. So it's very difficult to know, did someone get anxiety and then that trigger problems with eating and then that trigger weight gain and that can trigger problems with airflow, or acutely does someone choking out and now they're getting anxious because they have to go to sleep and they know subconsciously they're going to choke out. Like there's a lot of different ways these let's say these arrows go. They go, it's kind of like a circle, and then you're asking someone to say, where's the beginning and the end of a circle where it's continuously connected. So I share that because years ago, when I was younger, my strategy to cope with stress would have been, I didn't have enough time in my day to get all my schoolwork done and my other work and my research, et cetera, and then still work out hard. So I just wouldn't go to sleep. I would just keep doing more and more and more. And I was able to tough it through and essentially get by on, let's just say, inadequate sleep or, a poor level of sleep. And as I've been looking at the data, now I have an opportunity to test lots of people. One of the fastest ways to harm someone is to interfere with the sleep cycle. And the other thing that's really been striking for me is, we hear over the years how powerful testosterone is. So like if a guy's taking testosterone, that could help him, add muscle, lose body fat when, doing an appropriate way with other strategies like, exercise, lifting weights. But if a guy is taking testosterone and he doesn't get enough sleep, he could still have erectile dysfunction, which basically tells you how much stronger sleep is than testosterone.
No doubt.
It could negate the benefits, if you will. So I will share that.
I've experienced that myself for sure. Anytime sleep is off for a couple of days, sex drive is non-existent.
It's almost zero. Exactly.
It's gone.
Yeah, but
it becomes like a 9 to 5. It's like you can still show up for the job. Doesn't mean that you can perform well. You might still
you have to really focus now. But let me really focus on.
You got to pick and choose. Like, okay, I can get it up, but don't expect me to put it in motion very well. Or I can move a lot, but it won't necessarily be up. So you got to pick one. Which one do you want? It's like, do you want the drums or do you want the drumstick? You got to pick which one you want. So, but it's interesting that you brought that up, Thomas, because I had heard on another podcast. I'm on Jocko Willick's podcast, and he had brought up something about sleep, like a certain amount of sleep being very genetic. And what I'm saying about that is, we've always heard that you need to get 8 hours of sleep, and then be more specific, get 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, and then it went from like 7 to 9 hours. It kind of had that little buffer right there, and now he had brought up a point that no matter what, throughout his life, he's never really been able to sleep 8 hours straight. He sleeps pretty much, I think, like 5 hours or 6 hours, something like that, 6 hours at the most, but yet he feels like he functions fine. And I was going to ask you, is there any research that can back that up what he brought up was the fact that it's always been like that with just about anybody in his family, his father, grandfather, anyone in his family, that's pretty much what their sleep patterns were like, 5 to 6 hours at the most. And, pretty much, I mean, like I said, I don't know him like my daily, listen to him or talk to this guy or anything like that and know what his daily functions are like, but it seems like he's pretty on point. But of course, when we're doing shows or whatever else, we're going to show people what we need to show them and not show them necessarily any of our weaknesses or whatever, especially when you have platforms based on how strong and how much of a badass you are, and how, on point you are with everything. So I'm just asking you, is there any research to back that up where it could be something where genetically, some of us can't, we don't function very well with 8 hours of sleep uninterrupted, whereas you can function for years upon a time on and on and on with 5 hours and 6 hours and still have those same traits as if someone who would have 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep and function in the same way. Is that even any research to even back that up? Is there anything that even links to that?
Yeah, so sleep is genetically controlled. So that part is pretty accurate. But I could tell you that I've had every gene in my body tested. So I've had 22,000 genes tested. And when I talk to people, oftentimes that say stuff about genetics, when I ask them, did you have your genetics done? Usually it's no, or it's like some simple panel like a 23andMe, which I think is garbage and deceptive. So they didn't really have the genetic stuff done. They're simply going by their family history. And, that's the old school way of looking at stuff. So years ago, we would say, did your parents have a heart attack or your grandparents have a heart attack? And then, okay, so you have an increased risk. Today, we have the capability of measuring molecular mechanisms with such detail, I could very quickly see if something is genetic or not. And the point I want to make is 80% of the time it is not genetic. I mean, that's a rough number. There's going to be some fluctuations with that. But I have, men, Indian men, so not American Indian men, but men, Indian men from other country that has said, I have diabetes in my family, 3, 4 generations, everybody's had diabetes. I test these guys and I find they got issues with chromium metabolism, which can lead to diabetes, but it's not genetic. It's more an issue of their lifestyle. When I test people that say, I get by on, let's say, 5 hours of sleep and I feel great, when I ask them, what accuracy, what balance, what coordination testing have you done? I get blank stares like, what is that? So when someone says
and also,
they're fine,
do those people? How much coffee do those people drink too?
Oh yeah.
If someone says they only sleep 5 hours per night and they feel great, I'm like, okay. Do you drink coffee at all? If they say no, then I'm like, okay, I buy it. You're not taking any supplements. You're not taking modafinil. You're not taking ephedrine. You're not taking coffee. Then I'll buy it. If they're drinking a pot of coffee or they're taking modafinil or they're taking some kind of upper, then it's just a battle of attrition where inevitably you're going to crash at some point.
Sure. So people sometimes have tools they've developed to kind of function at the level they're happy with.
Right.
And they may not be considering those tools, I would say that there's a study was done years ago in men I just found interesting in that it was the same guys. They tested under different conditions. So imagine you get a bunch of guys and 1/3 of those guys are going to sleep 4 hours a night. Then there's going to be a washout period where they sleep however they normally sleep. Then they're going to be crossed over to sleep either 8 or 12 hours. And they're going to be a washout period where they would sleep normally. And then they would be crossed over to the third treatment effect. So, like, guys are being tested in different orders. So, like, I might get 8 hours first. One of you may get 4 hours first. The other guy may get 12 hours first. But eventually, we're going to get all 3, time intervals for sleep. And then the time intervals will be lined up, and then all the data that was collected will be organized, and then you're basically, every person is compared against themselves during the 3 time points or the different intervals, and then we look at the group findings. And what they found was that when these were all men, when they got 12 hours of sleep, they had the best hormone responses. So there was far more recovery that took place. And so I didn't get a chance to connect with the scientists that did that study because in my mind, when I looked at that, I thought, what environment was created for those guys to sleep? Because, like you've ever traveled and you sit on a bed where, wow, this bed's comfortable, and you just pass out.
Yeah.
You know, you go sit in places where this bed is killing my back, and you can't sleep. You're tossing and turning all night.
Yeah, right.
So we know just acutely from going to different hotels, you know, that the environment can affect. Well, then, now let's say the bed's comfortable, but let's say there's some kid screaming in the hallway, right? Now, you know, I got friends that are very sensitive to noises around them. And then I got friends like me. If there was an explosion in the hallway, nope, I wake up when I wake up. I'm not waking up right now because I'm still sleeping. So, yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you what happened. You know, where someone else would be like up instantly. But having said that, you know, if there was like, if I was like babysitting my nieces or nephew, or if there's like a young child in the environment that I'm responsible for, I hear one noise and I'm up like a lightning bolt. So I think there's ways we could modify our sleep behavior when there's something that matters to us more than ourselves, you know. And the common thing is usually a family member or something.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking at doing now is I've been involved in testing different magnetic fields, because my belief is that having a magnetic field around you while you sleep for about 8 hours will dramatically enhance recovery and optimize hormone responses. And we have a variety of technologies here. These were all developed by other scientists. I did not develop any of them. I'm just simply I was intrigued enough to purchase them, and then I just test. You know, as different people use them, we collect data to see, all right, what's happening. I was so intrigued that I actually bought one and put it in my own home. And so, of course, when people come over, they're like, dude, what the heck is that? Because it's not a normal thing you're going to see in some guy's bedroom.
How big is this thing? What does it look like? How big is this thing?
It's roughly 7 feet long, about 3.5 feet wide, maybe 4. And then it's the height.
So you have Shaq in your bedroom.
That's right. Actually, they did an MTV Cribs episode where he had this huge round bed. And he took one of his kids and threw him, and he threw his kid far, and the kid still landed on the bed. Like, the bed was so wide, the kid could sail through the air and still land on the bed. That's how big it was.
Yeah, when we were in my family and I, my parents, my brother and I, were all in Kenya one time at a game park, checking out animals and so forth, and we stayed at this resort, which used to be owned by a serious gun runner. So this guy was loaded. He had tons of money. Anyway, he was arrested. All of his properties were confiscated. And then we walk into the master bedroom, and it was the largest bed I had ever seen. I mean, you could put 10 people on there, which is probably what he did. You know, my mom looks at the bed. She's like, why would anyone need the bed this big? My dad's like, oh, you're the only one who would think that. You're the only one who would ask that question. You know, this bed was awesome. I mean, I slept on it one night. You could just keep rolling and rolling, and you're not going to fall off the other edge. It was great. I was like, this is an awesome bed.
Yeah, it's amazing what's out there. So, I've tried testing. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the grounding type stuff, where it's basically it's like a sheet that has like this. It's somehow connected to copper wire, and it can go into electric outlet or go into a copper rod that's in the ground. And the idea is that you're going to somehow get the magnetic field from the Earth's crust through this copper wire, and that's going to influence you as you sleep. And there was a study or two that I had read that I thought, oh, it seems promising. I think they're weak designs, but you know, I don't expect a study to be done perfectly, simply because I know how hard it is to do research. And even when I control for everything that I know of, you know, years from now, some other bright guy is going to show something new that we didn't know about before.
Yeah.
So I look at a lot of this. It's kind of like, you know when a guy that sets a world record, he knows eventually some young stud is coming along is going to break it. It ain't going to be there forever. So I look at research kind of the same way. I'm going to do the best I can right now, but I know sooner or later somebody else will come along, and this guy's going to be smarter and faster, and he's going to break down. He's going to do his own thing and show that things have changed. You know. So after I tried the grounding stuff, though, I couldn't say I felt any difference at all.
Yeah.
I started reading all this research about how different, so basically very low magnetic fields can improve our cells. And it seems like the longer our cells were exposed to them, so that's how I started connecting the magnetic fields with sleep, because, where are you going to lay for 8 or 9 hours? I mean, when you're sleeping in your bed. So I started looking at ways that I can somehow connect the two. So I don't have the answers, perfectly done or figured out there, but we're definitely on the right track. We got some of these technologies I could tell you that.
What about this with device that you do have, the one you just described? What kind of benefits have you noticed from that?
So essentially, the way the device works is it balances out a dysfunction between, let's say, your sympathetic tone and your parasympathetic tone. So it's kind of like what most people don't realize is how much stress they have. So an example would be, you go to get a massage therapist is working on you, and they're like, oh, my God, your traps are rock hard. Most people know when they're tense, they kind of shrug their shoulders, just maybe a little bit, maybe a lot. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is the tension is really all over their body. And that tension would be in their hips. It could be around their knees. And one of the ways that tension affects you is it pulls your bones closer together. That increases mechanical friction. If you don't have any arthritis, you're probably not going to know that you're not going to feel anything. If you do have arthritis, you're going to know, man, I'm getting all this stuff clicking. And what winds up happening is, let's say you get a massage, and now you feel good, but then a day or two later, you're tight again.
Right.
So the question then is, well, why isn't this holding? And the answer is your nervous system doesn't accept, to relax you as normal. Your nervous system accepts you as tight as normal.
Right.
Now, what's feeding into that, most of the time it's posture stuff, meaning like where you're sitting or standing, like however you spend most of your day. So like for guys that work in transportation, they may be sitting in a vehicle, a car, van, or a truck for a long time.
Right.
Other guys, let's say in retail sales, they may be standing a lot, because they're in front of clients or customers talking about different products. So whatever you spend the most time in, that's probably having the single greatest impact on what's creating tension.
Yeah.
But there's things like, any type of stuff would, if you have kids and your kids aren't listening to you, that creates a little bit of tension. If you got, a partner and you and your partner are not seeing eye to eye on a matter, that creates tension. Mm-hmm. And so all this stuff, when it adds up, it affects your autonomic nervous system function. So basically, all day long, you have greater sympathetic tone than parasympathetic tone. So you're a little off. Now, if you want to work out, let's just say you're above normal, like you're not balanced, but you want to feel something beyond that because you're going to go train. So that's why guys then do pre-workout drinks or things with caffeine, or years ago ephedrine, all this kind of stuff. What that does, though, is it gets the sympathetic tone much greater. And you're definitely going to feel like, you're going to have a great workout at the moment, but it creates a greater imbalance now. So it kind of helps you do a better workout, but then afterwards, it's going to take significantly longer to recover.
Yeah.
So I started seeing all this stuff, and so I started looking for this tool. So I got this, basically we got a device that we can create a magnetic field where someone lays on a massage table, and this magnetic field then surrounds them, and kind of based on the parameters, like if someone came in there, if they have like a hip pain, I would set the parameters on the machine for their hip pain. If someone, let's say, had anxiety, there's like protocols, let's say all these different medical conditions. And then we would set accordingly. And they basically relax in the machine for about an hour. And we take a bunch of measurements like blood pressure, heart rate, pulse oximetry in both arms. We do a video of them moving around so we know how they were before, let's say, the use of the machine. And then we do the same exact stuff in the same exact order with the same exact equipment in the same exact location afterwards. And then we compare the two. And I got guys swearing it changed their life. And it's a bit comical in a way because as far as I could tell, they look exactly the same, right? Like I get the same guy, same height, same weight, right? With nothing really changed. But he says, man, I feel so much better. And so then we started saying, all right, well, how are we going to really quantify this in a way? So then we started having people work out. So basically, we do this magnetic field therapy, and then we have them go into the gym. And 100% of people are setting records doing things they haven't done before.
Wow.
I'm sorry, I misstated that. They're setting records doing the same movements, but they're doing more reps, sets, and more before, meaning
it's
like a lifetime PR, I guess. It would be a better way of saying it.
Right.
And I've literally had CrossFit world champions that were pretty banged up that have come in, do one session, and then go and set a lifetime PR in a snatch, which would then make me ask them, why are you doing snatches when you don't have to do snatches in your competition? What's the purpose there? And what I just realized, these guys they're so conditioned to push their body every workout.
Right.
So that's a whole nother problem. Like, why do you want to abuse yourself, right, type of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you don't have to kill yourself to become a better athlete. What you do need is a stimulus to get you in the right direction.
And in fact, it's paramount that you don't kill yourself in order to become a better
exactly.
athlete.
Yeah, but
reinforcing bad habits and bad technique, and you're draining your nervous system.
Yeah, but when you get used to that, though, then your standard is that. You know, I had years ago I met a professor from Japan who was sharing some data about overtraining, detraining, and let's say healthy levels of training. And we tried some of the stuff with athletes at Penn State, and basically when we toned down the volume of training, and we were taking all kinds of blood markers and measurements on these guys, we could show the athletes now they weren't overtrained, so that they were getting enough training to stimulate a response, but not enough training that they were overtrained. Every athlete says, I feel like I need to do more. The athletes go and set all kinds of records. And their response was, well, if I trained harder, I would have done better. And it just shows you how ingrained it is in people. Like if you do something and you're not sore, you then question, well, that must not have been that hard, right? Because you don't feel anything.
There's a lot of bad advice though that's perpetuated, such as no pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain.
When it's really pain. Actually, pain, you're going to have no gain. Actually, too much pain, no gain would be more appropriate, more accurate. So we get a lot of bad advice. A lot of times people are incredulous when I tell them about what I do. They go, "That's it?" I go, "Yeah, that's it. This is what works." People somehow think that if you're not working out 6 days a week, 2 hours a day, it's just a lot of misinformation.
But going back to what Thomas just said, you have these athletes who feel like they weren't training enough. On the flip side of that, you have these trainees who think they're overtraining all the freaking time. If they lift a couple of weights, all of a sudden, I'm going to take a few days off. I don't want to overtrain. Dude, you haven't even started yet.
Yeah, the average person sitting on the couch with their remote control, and they're worried about overtraining. So you got to get some training in first.
Well, that's actually a good segue into, so one of the other things I was thinking we would talk about.
Just real quick, Tom. How much does this device cost, and where would you buy it if you wanted to purchase it?
So if I want to do, machine is about $30,000. And if you wanted to buy it, it would be, I think magnaceutical.com is the, I wasn't prepared to market anything. I apologize. I don't know the website name.
No, that's okay. $30,000, huh? We should get them as a sponsor for the show.
That's right. There we go. I'll call them up.
We want a 10% commission on each show. 10. We get one of our
try so we can review it.
Yeah, exactly. You have to send each of us one for free, of course, so we can share our experiences with it, and then we get 10% of each sale. All we need to do is get one listener to buy it per month, or year.
What got me intrigued in the technology is that I have we work with people that have some serious chronic pain issues here, and one of my friends who has something called reflex sympathetic dystrophy, or sometimes it's referred to as a complex pain regional syndrome type 1. So basically, he's got like this burning sensation in his lower leg, and they've done all kinds of very extreme surgical procedures, and it's still, not getting better. So he basically went out, he tried using one of these machines, and he could feel a difference immediately. So that got me intrigued because, he's someone that I personally know that's tried a lot of different things. And most of the strategies he's tried are more surgical and drug-related. So when he tried it and got a result, I thought, well, it's worth looking into. And so then as I started looking more into the research behind it, I was very impressed with it. So that's kind of the reason why we got it here. And I've used it now with lots of guys with chronic back pain.
Yeah.
And essentially the way I kind of look at it is reduces like dysfunction in the nervous system so their body is not as stressed out. It then allows me to go to the gym side of the building and then do some exercises that we could teach them how to get rid of tension. And if you start to feel pain, what should you do? Because one of the things I find surprising is 100% of people that come here, when I ask them, has anyone taught you how to get rid of pain when you have it? That you're not allowed to take a drug or a supplement or any medication or, just on your own, you're by yourself, how do you eliminate pain? And 100% say, never heard of that. No one's ever talked to me about that. And these are things that, every medical school teaches basic concepts in neurology about the nervous system, about neuron distribution around the body and how the brain pays attention to some neurons more than others. And yet, despite that, there's not a translation into a practical use of that information. So we could have people right out of surgery and they can't move their ankle. Let's say if it was an ankle surgery, or they can't straighten their knee and they can't move because they're in pain. And we can show them very simple tools like, all right, take a chamois or take a tissue, something that has a pleasant sensation against your skin, and just move it around the face almost like in a square pattern. And keep doing that until you feel the pain go away in the afflicted, body part. And within 30 seconds to 2 minutes, they look at me and they start laughing. They go, "What the hell? How did you know that?" And because everybody has neurons in their face. There's no one of us that are born without neurons. I mean, I guess there possibly could be some rare genetic thing, but I haven't come across that. And what happens is your brain pays more attention to the neurons in your face. So if you have neurons in other parts of your body, one, the density is going to probably be a little bit less, and two, it's lower on a totem pole of neurons, if you will. So if you have a pleasant sensation coming from the face, the brain's going to say, "Oh, I feel good." And it's going to basically ignore the pain signals from the other areas. And so now you can do your necessary exercises or rehab without getting worse. And so these are, there's lots of stuff like that we do here with simple tools, like we use coffee stirrers and tissue. And then we teach people how to do this stuff on their own. And we always make a joke, "Hey man, this is going to be expensive. It's going to be about 6 cents. And then we're showing people these are real world tools everybody has access to. And the idea is that no one's gone over it before because, they're too, if your educational model is surgery, but when you have opportunity to look and test different things and see the responses, you're not really restricted or limited in any way. And so from my perspective, I know if I was to use myself as an example, if I have pain, I'm open to taking, depending on the intensity of the pain. If it was really extreme, I'll take any drug I need to, so I'm pain-free right now. Yeah. But having said that, I don't want to be on any drug or supplement the rest of my life that I'm dependent on, right? So on the one hand, I want to solve the problem, but on the other hand, I don't want to develop a dependency of any kind. And what I started finding is that as more and more people get into the habit of taking something when they have pain, they then stop learning or they stop thinking about how to get out of pain without that strategy. In other words, if you have to take a Celebrex every time you have pain, or let's say an ibuprofen, well then every time you have pain, that's all you know how to do. You never learn anything else. But if I teach people other options, like here's ways to move, here's movements you could do or tools you could use, what happens then over time, they get better and better at those other things, and now they never need Celebrex or Advil, ibuprofen, because anytime they have pain, they know what to do that doesn't require a supplement or a medication.
What would you recommend for? I have bone-on-bone arthritis in my left elbow. What would you recommend for that, if anything?
Yeah. So first, I'll challenge the concept of bone-on-bone, and what I mean by that is I've been told by 100 physicians that my left hip is bone-on-bone, and I'd ask them, well, does the MRI go to absolute zero? And everyone looks at me. There's no MRI machine that goes down to a single cell. And some estimates, there might be 2 million to 10 million cells. I haven't confirmed that, so I don't know if that's accurate. But let's just say if there's 1,000 cells, right? So we're way, below 2 million. So if you got 1,000 cells there and they can't see it, then how would anyone know it's bone on bone, right? So,
right.
And what happened was I talked to an orthopedic doctor who was affiliated with Yale. He's now retired in Spain. He's living a beautiful life, and I envy him. And he's got access to like beautiful beaches and stuff. And I was talking to him one day, and he goes to me, "How do you know you're bone on bone? Did you look inside the joint?" I go, well, I actually haven't. I mean, I got all these MRIs. I got like a lot of MRIs, and they all kind of say bone on bone. He's like, well, there's limitations to how much detail you can see from that method. And what I can tell you is when I've gone into people's joints, we've taken biopsies, and we've looked at it under an electron microscope where we could explode this stuff to millions of times above normal. And we would basically see that diseased cartilage is black under this, in this situation, and then we would do these treatments, and we can convert the diseased cartilage to a white, fluffy cartilage. So then, what would happen? I mean, he goes, did we create new chondrocytes? Was it bad chondrocytes that became good chondrocytes? He's like, the methods, and the way that we were doing things, we don't really know. We just know that whatever was there, it got better. And so we don't really know, like, when someone is bone on bone, if that's the case or not. But what has to happen, though.
Well, you would think if it's literally bone on bone, you're not going to be able to move it. You're not going to be able to bend it. I mean, without extreme pain, even if you can work through the pain, you would think it's just not going to move.
Yeah, well, so some details, though. So the incidence of osteoarthritis in the elbow is the same as the knee.
Okay.
But now think about how many times have you ever heard someone get an elbow replacement? Almost never, right? But you hear about knee replacements far more often. And part of that is loading. So, when your arm is hanging outside, the loading in the elbow is such that it's separating, the proximal and distal ends within the joint. So there's basically like a mild traction, if you will.
Yeah.
When you're now flexing, or let's say extending that elbow joint through with a load, let's say you got a dumbbell or a barbell or something, or even holding like a squat behind your back or something.
Right.
Well, now there's going to be some compression of those bones inside the elbow joint, so surfaces would interact. What I would look at first is, in theory, if let's just say it took you 300,000 repetitions of different movements to get you from, let's say, when your elbow was its healthiest to now, let's just say this is your most damaged in your life.
Yeah.
In theory, it would take 300,000 reps to go backwards. So the tissue can be remodeled. That's been shown in almost every tissue in the body. And so I'm extrapolating here, like, because it happened in the heart doesn't guarantee it could happen in cartilage in the elbow. But we do know that under the right conditions, we see liver, kidneys, heart, we see neurons in different parts of the body, we see bone, like all these tissues, muscle, there's regeneration capabilities. Some of that regeneration capability is from local stem cells in the tissue. Some of that is just from a combination of stimulating the existing cells there in a healthy way. So in the case of arthritis or osteoarthritis, first making sure there's building blocks present. In terms of glucosamine, I think the N-acetyl-D glucosamine form is better than glucosamine sulfate or glucosamine hydrochloride. But the best form of glucosamine, the one that's been actually shown to reverse cartilage, it's not available in the United States. It's, I think it's called N-butyryl D glucosamine, and it was developed by scientists in Canada, and it's been in the vet market, but it's very difficult to obtain. Otherwise, I would be on it for my own body. But it's mostly used for dogs right now. But that's actually been shown to reverse advanced chronic arthritis, which is different than a lot of studies are done with, let's say, different supplements, but it's an acute or injury type of arthritis in animals, and they show they could reverse it, but it doesn't translate well to the chronic type of arthritis that most people have.
Have you heard of avocado unsaponifiables?
Yeah. Yeah, so the original. Yeah, so the original material was this Piscicline product from France, and I probably am butchering the name. It was a French product that now lots of companies have, variations of it available. The danger is you don't know whose is you don't, since the one form is patented and, the exact chemical structures inside are protected. No one knows exactly. You don't know if company A, B, or C has something similar. I can tell you that the data is very favorable. When I look at a lot of that stuff, I've tested on myself, I've tested on people specifically. We call them ASU, avocado, soy unsaponifiables.
Yeah.
I don't, see long-term people saying, hey, I notice a difference. But when I look at the data, let's just say regardless of whether it's a drug or supplement or surgery, for the strategies that have been done to regenerate cartilage, the fastest that I could find, which it's confirmed, what there's like an MRI pre and post, is about a year. In the case of like joint injections, like PRP or ozone or ACS or prolotherapy, the patients in those studies may have had 12 to 40 or so procedures done, where it's like they're being injected every so often, like every 2 weeks or something, over a year. And then you can see there's a change in the MRI. Well, now you translate that to, what are you willing to do to get the result you want? And so, like for my left hip, I've spent probably $6 million over the last, I don't want to say 20 years, probably a little bit less than that. And I've done probably, 4 stem cell therapies to that hip. And it has not gotten worse. My MRI show it's actually about the same, maybe a tiny bit better. I have no osteonecrosis of the hip. But I'm not at the level, I can't move the way I want. So my expectations, I would say they were failed. My expectations were not met, let's say. So I would say it's
that's a lot of money to spend without getting significant results. My expectations are going to be really high if I spend that kind of money.
Well, but the way that we would sort of, let's say, if you came in here and said, all right, what are you going to do for my elbow? Where the one value I produce immediately for people is, well, you're not going to have to spend $6 million because I've already done it, and I got all this equipment here. We kind of have a good sense. So since we're talking about arthritis, let me share with you the technologies that are most promising right now. Okay. So one, that magnetic field therapy, because think about it reduces underlying tension throughout the nervous system, which could be contributing. So think of it as a two-way street. So let's say when there's contact pressure inside your elbow, your body's going to know this. So like if you and I, let's say if we had a social conversation at dinner, we might say something like everything in the body is connected. But now, if let's just say I had to present at a scientific conference or a medical conference, and I have to basically explain how an organism in the mouth can lead to arthritis in someone's elbow, I got to be able to present a lot of chemical and biochemical, physiological details. Otherwise, doctors that are tending like, this guy's an idiot, he's a quack, he's a liar, whatever you're going to say. But the fact is, it's true. We already got the mechanisms to show this, and different research groups are showing things. And so now from a big picture perspective, if you came to me and said, look, I want this problem solved, and I don't want it to get worse, I would say, well, let's look at all the studies done. Hey, there's data showing that organisms in the mouth contribute to inflammation that leads to arthritis. So let's address that. There's organisms in the digestive tract that, contribute to inflammation that leads to osteoarthritis. Let's address that. There's vitamin and mineral issues inside the body that if they're low, you cannot repair tissue. So we would kind of look at these different areas, and now you're going, at least in the right direction. So even if your elbow did not get better, the rest of you is not going to get worse. So it's still a positive result. But in terms of, let's say, direct intervention for the elbow, the stuff I'm looking at right now is magnetic field outside the body. And we have these fiber optic LEDs that, so I'm trained on this, but generally speaking, I can only do it in research or, if the doctors here want me to do it on it, I wouldn't necessarily do it on, let's say, patients. The doctors here would actually put this fiber optic LED, which emits a wavelength of light. So basically, it's like sticking, you could think of it as like an LED flashlight inside your elbow. And what that does is that there's one color. So think of it like a catheter that goes in a joint space. It's very, very tiny. And the catheter is almost like a shielding. And then we put different fiber optic cables in and out of this catheter. And then one would be, say, increases ATP levels of your chondrocytes. Another one gets rid of inflammation. Another one will kill off any organisms that would be in that joint space. What's surprising is how many times they find bacteria or other types of organisms in people's joint spaces. And in theory, they're supposed to be the joint's supposed to be sealed, like nothing should be getting in or out of that.
Right.
But they find that practically that's not exactly true. Lots of people have openings behind their knee joint. It's typically where it'll be like a Baker's cyst or something that's formed. And the suspicion is that there's similar things that could happen to any synovial joint in the body. Orthopedic surgeons that have gone in and out of joints a lot, they'll usually say, oh, yeah, I've seen that. But if you actually look at the research, or any like medical anatomical reference books, no one really talks about a lot of that stuff. So it's kind of like guys with experience know it exists, but it's never really spelled out. And I think it's because it happens at a minor level or minor amount, so no one really is concerned about it, across the board. But I think practically it could be an explanation why some people, let's say, why doesn't a body part heal? And that's so that let's say that fiber optic thing in the joint would be a great tool. Now the question is, how many times would you need to do the therapy, and how long does it take before? I don't have an answer to that yet. These are all new technologies I have coming in. What I just had done recently for my hip, I went to see a doctor in Boca Raton who's got an amazing center there. And we've collaborated over the years. He's a pretty sharp guy. And what he's done is he's figured out a way to stimulate the production of a new type of stem cell in your own body. So he basically jacked up my ability to make something called V cells, which are very small embryonic-like stem cells. Then they collect the stem cells from my blood, and then they basically turn them on, and they give them back to me in the form of an IV, and then they inject them, in my case, in my left hip. So I had this done last Wednesday. So it's not even a week yet, right? What are we today? Today's the 31st, so tomorrow would be a week. So it's too early. I won't know the results of this for another 3, maybe 4 months before we get a sense of, okay, what happened? How much did it help?
Right. Right.
So those would be things that are very impressive. Now, I got tons of stuff here from Germany and Israel, countries all over the world. We have these technologies that the FDA is approved for use in different scenarios. But essentially, what I kind of find is most of the stuff really does a good job at managing pain. It does not build up your joint brand new. And the stuff that does build up your joint brand new, that's typically you have to go to other countries for that. But then when you go to those other countries, there's no standard. You don't know, for example, the model for stem cells for a while would be we take stem cells from your bone marrow or from your body fat. We grow them outside your body. And then some places, different countries would try to make those cells become chondrocytes. Then they would put those chondrocytes back into your damaged joint with some type of spackling or what they call scaffolding procedure. And what they found is that as these cells grow and expand and go through different passages, the phenotype changes. And so now as a result, the type of cartilage that's produced, it's harder, it has more calcium in it. So it's not as spongy and soft as you would want it. So it does absorb impact and shock and some of the loading forces. So it isn't until this year there's been the first paper published that's been showing now how to prevent that. So that means all the people that were getting these procedures done before, while they may have had the cartilage regrow, it's not exactly what they, as they were born with, let's say. It's a little bit harder, a little bit rougher. So pretty soon, and who knows when that is, but I'm going to say within the next 2 to 5 years, the data is coming out so fast that we're going to be able to have some cool toys to help people. And one of the things I've been working on right now is, are you guys familiar with iontophoresis patches at all?
That sounds vaguely familiar. So I'm not sure. What exactly is that?
So think of it as best way to describe it. Think of it as like a giant Band-Aid, like almost like a rectangular Band-Aid. And like there's an adhesive on one side of a Band-Aid, and the other side could be like a latex type material or something else, like a spongier type of material. So on the inside, there's like a chamber that you could put some sort of medication or some substance that you want to deliver to the skin. And there's like a little battery inside, almost like you could give it as like a disposable type of watch battery or something, like those flat silver type batteries. And then you put it over the damaged area, and then it uses electricity to sort of drive whatever the substance was in the liquid inside the patch through the skin to the damaged joint. And one of the things that's been coming out over and over again is that vitamin C appears to enhance chondrogenesis, which is basically formation of cartilage. And so we're looking at now, so when we talk about, I guess right before we started, we were talking about high-dose vitamin C IVs and stuff like that.
Right.
I know we could do, it's easy to get high-dose vitamin C into someone's blood. That part's, lots of guys could do that, no problem. What's not clear to me, though, is, well, if I did that, does it actually get inside your joint because you have a synovial capsule and it's supposed to be sealed? And there's no standard for measuring synovial fluid. In other words, like, there's research studies like if there's inflammatory substances in the fluid, that could be harmful. So in my mind, what I'm kind of thinking about is we do what's called a lavage, where we kind of irrigate out or wash out the inflamed liquid that's going to be in that joint, because there's going to be some stuff in there that's not good. Then replace that with a high molecular weight hyaluronic acid, which is essentially a lubricant, and then put into that some things like vitamin C and some other substances at a dose that basically drives chondrogenesis, and then figure out how to do some type of cyclic loading to regrow the cartilage. So you need stimulation of the chondrocytes for them to lay down cartilage matrix. But it appears that the stimulation is kind of like it changes and is progressive over time. So it'd kind of be like, like if you were just getting back to, let's say if you were squatting before, now you haven't squatted in years, and let's say you squatted 1,000 pounds, you're probably not going to squat starting with 1,000 pounds, right? You may start with a bar, get your groove back and get stuff back.
Yeah, exactly.
And so kind of think about with your elbow joint, you would have been lifting heavy at some point. Now you start to realize, hey, this is aggravating my condition. I'm going to tone down the loading.
Right.
So maybe initially you might just do mobility work. Like there may not be a true load in the sense you're used to from your past, but there's still going to be forces transmitted to the elbow joint. And then over time, you might do that motion, let's say, instead of in air, now you might do some mobility work in the water. And then you might try doing some stuff either in rice or sand or kind of like some of the martial arts movements that could be done where you could fill up like a 5 or 10-gallon paint bucket with water, with rice or sand. And kind of, as you get stronger, you just bury your hand deeper in the rice or the sand and move it around so the resistance would be because of all the rice and sand above that point. And then over time, you've got sort of like this, let's say, mild progressive loading, and that helps to kind of get the chondrocytes activated and formed. And then you would take, I think collagen peptides are way better than avocado, soy, and saponifiables. It's one of the few substances, that's a supplement, it's not a drug. It's a few substances I've seen that has MRI data that shows it regenerates cartilage in every joint of the body. So it doesn't matter where, spine, elbow, hip, knee. So, in terms of long-term...
Well, what's the name of that again?
So it'd be called collagen peptides.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think...
Those are collagens derived from some animal tissue, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so years ago, there was stuff from cows and stuff from chickens, even roosters. And that stuff they would do like, especially the chicken, rooster stuff, would be like 10 to 40 milligrams a day. Then they started looking at these other types of collagen peptides where they've gone, 10, 20, maybe 30 grams a day. And now, if I look at all the research, where the way I see it going is I think pretty soon the collagen peptides are going to come from marine products, like basically some type of fish. Right. And the reason is they get the anti-inflammatory effects of the fish oil components, along with the cartilage-building aspects of the collagen peptides. And over time, they'll probably show that works superior to collagen peptides. We have so we use a raw material collagen peptide. It comes from a German manufacturer. The company's called Fortigel, Fortigel. Mm-hmm. And I stack that with basically it's an anti-inflammatory extract from a herb, and basically the active component is it's much more effective than, let's say, Celebrex in a milligram per milligram basis. And it's because it's natural. You don't get you don't have to worry about GI stress issues like it's going to damage your digestive tract. But the rationale is that if you inhibit inflammation, you inhibit the enzymes that break down cartilage. So that's why you need to do something that controls inflammation. And then because you inhibit, let's say, the catabolic state of the joint, you then provide these building blocks that increase the anabolic aspects of the joint. And so then you have a net gain over time. But keep in mind, let's say if you did everything exactly that your body needs right now, the research is pretty clear. It's probably going to take a year to regrow everything to the level you want. Yeah. And this is where it's like, okay, so for example, here, I got the clinic, I got doctors that are injecting me, and now I got to travel somewhere. So in the middle, I'm getting injections every week, and I got to go somewhere and come back, and now I missed 2 or 3 weeks of injections because I was traveling.
Right.
So now there's a loss of continuity of care, and so now if let's say, it's too early to see what the end result is, but let's say 3 months from now, I don't have a result. It could simply be because I broke up the cycle. You know what I mean? You got this process rolling. And so this is the challenge where I'd say right now, from a current medical perspective, ideally it's kind of like one treatment and done, right? Because it's hard for people's lifestyles to keep doing something.
Well, I also don't think that most people give something enough time to work. For example, glucosamine. Jerry Brainham was on the show, and he talked about how you're not really going to get the full benefits until 12 weeks in. So if someone tries it for 30 days and says, I'm not really feeling anything, and then they stop, they're missing out.
Yeah. Well, I know in my case, I want everything yesterday.
But most people do too. I mean, people want to make 6 figures their first year in business, but your goal should be to still be in business after that first year is a more realistic goal.
Yeah, well, especially though, I'll say more serious nature that when someone's got pain or suffering, right?
Oh, yeah.
They've usually been dealing with it for a while. So then the last thing you want to think is, oh, shit, I got to do this for another year. You know what I mean?
Then I think you have to do something else, such as, okay, you're going to do this because it's going to be more immediate, and then this is the more long-term approach so that you don't have – maybe you take some kind of pain relief method which just dulls the sensation. It doesn't address the underlying issue, but at the same time you're doing something else that over time will address the underlying issue so that you don't have the pain as a result.
Yeah. And that, so some of our, let's just say, workout philosophy goals here, I hear people, so we get a lot of retired NFL guys, a lot of, let's say, military guys, Navy SEALs, or even fighters. All these guys are hardcore tough dudes. None of these guys I'd ever want to get into a fight with because I know I'm going to go down fast. So as I'm working with these guys, the one thing I always hear is that, I could handle pain. I could handle a lot of pain, or I'm really tough. Pain doesn't bother me. Right. That sounds good, but let me tell you how your nervous system interprets this.
Right.
So the more you have pain and the longer you ignore it, the stronger the signals from your brain and spinal cord. So if you want to tough it out for 50 years, that's okay. But when it finally gets to that point you can't handle it, it's also I think whether you can handle it or not is the wrong question.
I get massages once a week, whether I feel great or not, as a preemptive strike, if you will. I'm not waiting until pain kicks in to get a massage. I get it every week so that she fixes all the problems I created that week via my training, lifestyle, whatever it may be, so that it doesn't accumulate over time and then spiral into real pain, which takes a long time to recover from. Now, is it because I can't handle the discomfort of being sore and minor pain? No, of course not. I can deal with that, but why would I want to deal with that? And also, you have to ask yourself, where is this leading? It's going to get worse. you're not just going to maintain that pain. It's going to get worse over time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so you could practice a skill. Let's say if someone's learning how to swing a baseball bat or a golf club or a tennis racket, the more you keep practicing, the better you get at it. Well, it's the same way that pain is. The more you keep doing something with pain, the better you get at feeling pain. And so what happens is then, you can come up with different coping strategies to ignore it, but eventually it's just going to overcome.
Well, I mean, Louis Simmons said, I know you've trained with Westside, so I'm going to bring up Louis Simmons. I heard an interview with Joe Rogan and Louis Simmons, and Louis said that I'm just in pain all the time. It's just my reality. I've been in pain for so long that it's just part of life. And that sounds kind of depressing to me, man. Whether someone's a wuss or not, and Louis is obviously very tough, but I don't want to follow a workout strategy where I'm just going to be in pain for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And the challenge too is, the longer you have the pain, let's say the greater the threat to the body, and it may be so in theory
there's other consequences other than what you're just feeling. Yeah.
Right. Now it's a constant threat, so typically adrenal glands are just depleted because you're always stressed out.
Right.
And it may take really weird creative strategies. Like I've had colleagues of mine that would tell me stories. These are doctors tell me stories they've had with their cases where someone comes in and have some really rare pain issue. No drugs work. No supplements work. Every exercise hurts them, makes them worse. And he had this idea that, in theory, anyone that has pain can be taught how to get out of pain. So that's like theoretical concept. The problem is practically, let's say if you came in and it's going to take me 8 hours to figure out how to get you out of pain. Well, do you really want to spend 8 hours here? You know what I mean? And so these are like the practical challenges, especially when if I just tried 7 hours and nothing worked, you're not thinking, hey, let's do 1 more hour. You're thinking at that point, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, right? So that's what my colleague is telling me. He's like, I'm working with this woman all day and nothing's working. And, she's hearing how great he is, and he can't produce a result, so she's thinking now he's terrible, and meanwhile the guy's good. So finally he said, what do you do when you're stressed out? And she says, well, I scratch my head, and I do this thing. He's like, show me. So he goes, does that hurt you? And she goes, no, not at all. So then he's like, okay. So he finds a spot on her head, and he starts applying pressure to it, and she says she feels better. So he kind of went with her habit, like when we're all stressed out, we have certain idiosyncrasies and patterns, weird things we might do. So he went, we realized after 8 hours, I just got to work with what she already is doing. And eventually he got her to the point where she could move and do things without pain. But that's not like something you're going to read in a medical book somewhere. It's not something someone's going to be able to tell you.
Right.
Because one, you don't know what that other person's doing. Two, there's like too many different vectors coming together.
It's funny the habits people have though, just building on what you said, when they have discomfort or anxiety. I remember as a kid, if we made too much noise downstairs, right, we woke up my dad, he'd come down in his boxers and T-shirt, he'd be scratching the top of his head at his balls. Like, guys, shut up, go to sleep. It was like every single time. Like he probably wasn't even aware that he was doing that. That was just his go-to anxiety move. And it reminds me of that movie Rounders with Matt Damon, where he's a professional poker player, and he can just walk in the room and without seeing anyone's cards, he knows what everyone has just from their body posture and their facial expressions. We give away so much that we're not aware of.
That's part 1 of our discussion with Dr. Thomas Incledon. Make sure you check out part 2 of our discussion on episode 200 as we talk about the next level in technology to help you with recovery, breathing techniques, and how to break through plateaus. All this and more in the next episode of the Live Life Aggressively Show with Mike Mahler and Sincere Hogan. Until then, take care, everybody. Catch you on the next one.